A few episodes ago, I talked about how I missed a Philly meetup for the blind. In this episode of the I Can't See You podcast, I'll talk about going to one for the first time since the pandemic hit. And of course, getting there is part of the adventure.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 136 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and I've got a few things to talk about as usual, maybe even a couple more than normal. And yesterday, Wednesday, was a very busy day for us over here. I had a doctor's appointment for my glaucoma specialist. We had the alarm finally installed. And then we had a Philly meetup for the blind, which is going to be the bulk of this episode. But before I get to the meetup and before I get to my doctor's appointment, I just had to mention this, and it's a couple of Ziggy stories. Ziggy the other day was in the office where Jane had worked on the basically the smallest bedroom, which it was very tiny, and we knew that was going to be an office all along. Jane used it while she was living here, and now Liz is using it as her office. So she's setting it up a little bit differently than Jane had it and adding some shelving and things like that. Well, Liz was working in there, and Ziggy was in there with her, and Liz had to run to the bathroom. And when she came back from the bathroom, Ziggy was standing on top of the desk, not with just his front paws. His whole body was on top of the desk. And so she, of course, grabbed the camera and took a picture of him up there. You can see a computer keyboard between his legs and stuff like that. Well, later that day or the next day, I posted that picture, a picture of Ziggy on top of his cage. And again, not just his front paws, his whole body on top of the cage where he sleeps. And a picture of him chewing wood chips in the backyard. And I posted that to the Shiloh and Maisie group. Shiloh and Maisie were Ziggy's parents. I say were because Shiloh is, long since been moved on to heaven. And I posted that to the group, so his siblings and his siblings' owners and other folks who are in there can see it. And there was a comment by someone that was just, it seemed so out of line that, was kind of giving me the what for, that's what cages are made for. Don't you know about their crates or whatever? That's what they're made for, to put them in there. Ziggy's crate is downstairs. It would have taken Liz longer to come downstairs with him, put him in, go back upstairs, go to the bathroom, and then, she was in the bathroom a minute or two. So she thought she was safe. There was nothing out on the desk other than the computer. There was nothing on the floor that he could rip up, eat, whatever. So she felt safe. And then he was there. And this, I've since been texted by one of the other folks in the group who has one of Ziggy's brothers saying that she couldn't believe how out of line the person was and so forth and so on. It was just kind of funny that I was kind of stunned by it, to be honest. This woman would just say stuff like this. I mean, she was saying, this is how bad things happen and so forth and so on. I mean, again, Ziggy's a puppy. That's, the consensus from, the other litter folk, see it, even when you're watching them, as I've said, even when I'm out with him, I don't know what he's getting into, if he's digging for something or he finds something in the backyard and starts eating it. I don't know what it is. Stuff blows into our backyard all the time, even though it's fenced in. There's a gap beneath, which I've mentioned before. So I thought that was funny. On a similar note, with this lady, we've been taking Ziggy on 2 walks a day. And I shouldn't say we. Liz has been taking Ziggy on 2 walks a day. And the walks are roughly 1.8 miles each. We do the same route usually, unless it's a hot time of the day and Liz doesn't get going early in the morning with him. And I don't go on that one. I go on the one at night. Well, the other day she was walking him in the morning. And she's walking down, and she sees a woman across the street on the other sidewalk across the street, whose dog was, going to the bathroom on a yard. Not that part's not important, but after the dog got finished his or her business, the dog spotted Ziggy and started to go nuts. Now, when Ziggy sees a dog anywhere, whether it's in a house or walking down the street, unless they come right up to him, he doesn't even bark. He looks, he might, pull a little bit, but he doesn't even bark. The lady starts yelling at Liz, "Why are you still walking? Wait until we get behind this car." And I guess there was a car parked on the other side of the street that, when the dog was behind there, it would have been easier for this dog not to see Ziggy. It's not like they were walking down the same side of the street and coming towards each other. The lady was across the street. So I don't know what makes her think that she owned that street and that was her right to move about as freely as she wanted, but not Liz and Ziggy. When we're walking on the sidewalk and someone is coming towards us, whether they have a dog or not, we will pull into a driveway or step off onto the apron where that leads to the street. So we leave the sidewalk clear for the person jogging, the person walking, or the dog and the person walking. And, if they have a dog, 9 times out of 10, the dog will come over and they'll sniff each other. Sometimes Ziggy sounds like he's very ferocious, but he always wants to just say hi and see the other dog and see the other people. He loves to go up to people. And, so I just don't understand what that woman across the street thought she was entitled to. And I just think, I think it just speaks volumes about what's happening in general in society today. And I just couldn't believe it. So, just kind of weird. And, just back to Ziggy for some of the stuff he does, I may or may not have mentioned, he has gone into the sink. Now, the sink is probably about 12 to 15 inches deep. So the counter height is whatever counter height is. It's not lower, it's not higher, it's regular counter height. So he's putting his paws up on the counter, and he's able to get his head in and reach in far enough where he can get stuff that's laying flat on the sink, on the bottom of the sink. A couple nights ago, he grabbed a knife from there, which we got away from him. Somebody else was in the kitchen, so they saw that, and they got him to drop it. A couple days later, he went in and grabbed the spatula that I used to make eggs, and he had that. Now, he likes eggs, and sometimes when I make eggs for me, I will make him one as well, which he loves. In fact, I did that today for lunch. He had one. He had one egg. So it's just kind of fun. I don't know where we can put anything anymore to keep it away from him. He's taken paper towels right off the paper towel roll. We don't know where to put that. He just loves anything that's white, like paper towels, wrappers. When we're on a walk, he's picked up cigarette butts. And we try to get them before he swallows them, but who knows, if we've gotten them all. So it's just kind of funny with him. And again, he's a puppy. Hopefully it won't kill him and he'll grow out of it, or we can train him to not do it. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And it's just funny thinking of those two women, one on Facebook and then the one walking down the street. So I mentioned in a previous episode, and I don't remember if it was the last one or a couple episodes ago, where I had gone to my retina specialist and he told me it wasn't my retina. And he recommended that I go see my glaucoma specialist, which I did yesterday. That was the soonest I could get the appointment. It was around 2 weeks in between the two appointments. And fortunately for me, the numbers that were given to me, which I think I mentioned back in the It's Not My Retina episode, and I believe that was episode 134, so it was 2 episodes ago. In that episode, I had mentioned that when they took my intraocular pressure, they got 9 and 20-something. I don't remember it. My right eye I don't pay too much attention to. If it doesn't hurt, I'm not going to do anything to it. I can't see anything at all. Even light, I can't tell. So, unless there's some pain or something crazy going on, just leave it be. Until GoPro makes something small enough, we're leaving it be, unless it starts to hurt. So yesterday I went to the glaucoma guy. His name is Dr. Pro. And they did my pressure the normal way, which is one of those machines, and I don't remember what it's called, where you basically sit your chin in the cup and they put this blue light in your eye. I thought it was funny yesterday. The blue light wasn't as nice a blue. Now, it could be because of my vision. So he took the pressure, and it was a little bit low, but better than 9. It was 6 in the eye that mattered and 23 in the other eye, which I was happy to hear, because I was worried if it was actually 9, that would have meant that my pressure is going up. They like it around 7. And for a normal person, usually 12 to 15 is what you want it at. For me, with all the glaucoma surgeries I've had, they liked it. It used to be around 8, and then when I had some trouble and it spiked, and I had some things done, it's been low, too low, and it makes it hard to see. And that, was one of my fears also, that it could be that why I've been having the trouble. But just like Dr. Garg, the retina specialist, Dr. Pro noticed that my cornea seemed more swollen, for lack of a better word. I don't remember if that's the word he used, but it had more fluid in it. So he also recommended these drops called Miro, and what they are, it's basically like a salt mixture. I think it's more than what you would, rinse your contacts off with. So I started that today. I got those today, and so we'll see how that goes. But he recommended that I go see the cornea specialist, and I'm starting to get the feeling like I did, around 7 or 8 years ago when I was having trouble, and everyone was just passing me off. Now, Dr. Pro said that the retina guy says it's never the retina. So we laughed at that. So we'll see how it goes. It has been horrible, and and again, at least I can still see something. So for now, I have a cornea specialist appointment in a few weeks at the end of August. So we'll see how it turns out. And I found out last night, and I don't know that I should even mention this, and then I'll get on to the important stuff of this episode, if any of it's important. I talked to Brian Fischler. Brian is he lives in New York. He is the host of That Real Blind Tech Show. He's got some other podcast stuff going on. He's a stand-up comic, and he is, most importantly, the commissioner of the All Blind Fantasy Football League. Now, if you followed last season with us, we had all sorts of money thrown our way to do a case study. And I don't remember the exact number that we ended up getting. It was in the $700 range. I don't remember, $725, $750, somewhere in there. And I was thrilled. Everybody in the league was thrilled at how great it was. It was just a great season. And again, I don't know if it was the money. I don't know if it was Kasaya, the person from Verizon Media, who, did all the case study work. We had to fill out forms each week to, talk about what we did and if we had any trouble with the accessibility. And the app is just outstanding. The Yahoo Fantasy app is the best that I've ever found. And it's just been great. So over the off season, Brian has been, sending emails occasionally about doing, somebody was interested in doing a video or a commercial with us in it, and would we be interested, and stuff like that. Well, yesterday I got an email from him, and it said, I need to speak to you ASAP. And it was, to all of us in the league. And there's 12 of us, or 10 of us, I guess. One of which is Kasaya from Verizon. And it's funny how big of a football fan she is. And it was awesome talking with her and, throughout the season, and then doing the exit interview. Well, they've done something even better for this year. Now, I don't want to say too much about it until it happens, but it involves traveling, more money than I just mentioned from last year, and video of our entire draft. So everybody's going to see me pick the guy that gets hurt within the first few weeks of the season. So I think I'm going to have to study a little better for who I'm going to choose this year, because I don't want to look that dumb, over and over again to thousands or maybe even millions of viewers. So I'll shed more on that. Travel would be to one of two cities, the top 2 cities in population in the U.S. I'm pulling for New York, but we'll see what happens. There's also a tie-in with the NFL. So, it just sounds really exciting, and I'm really I had a great conversation with him, and it was, we talked about his podcast as well. We talked about podcasting in general. And of course, we talked about the fantasy football stuff. So it was just very cool. Now, I talked to him while I was on my way home from a Philly Meetup for the Blind gathering last night in Center City, Philadelphia. And if you remember a few episodes ago, I ended up not going to a meetup that was at a place that I really like called Victoria Free House. It's a British style pub. I had fish and chips there, when I was there the last time with the group, and it was just awesome. It was just a great vibe. They had Quizzo, which, I love. And, the team I was on, we were just kicking butt because everybody knew a little bit about, everybody had like mine was sports. I also knew one or two other, I think it was geography. I don't remember. Somebody else knew, artwork, and somebody else knew something else. So it was just a good fit. Our team was just a good fit, and it was just a lot of fun. Now, I didn't go because, as I've mentioned, probably every episode since, or even before, it is so difficult for me to go long distances using my cane, sweeping back and forth, because my hands always hurt. And I am just not comfortable. Even when we walk the dog, I rarely sweep unless, as I've said previously, unless I'm crossing the street because Ziggy and Liz are in front of me and I don't want to trip on the curb. And sometimes I still trip on the curb because, I just do because of the way the curve is, at the street. So, to go on my own and have to constantly be sweeping on a sidewalk, in the mall or in the train station, not a big deal. Because those floors are nice and they usually have, some sort of tile down or they're a smooth cement. Sidewalks have those, the expansion joints and, there's all sorts of other obstacles. Well, a couple days ago, and I've known about this meetup, and I was on the fence because I had the doctor's appointment in the morning. I knew the alarm guy was coming after we got back from the doctor's appointment. The doctor's appointment, I think we were gone for probably 4 hours. I sat in the waiting room for probably about an hour. And, I wasn't sure that I was going to be, first of all, feel good. And if I was going to be exhausted from all that. And of course, it turned out the night before I was editing White Canes Connect. And if there's time at the end, I'll mention it seems like it was user error. I mentioned it last week about editing. I was working on episode 3. I thought I was all done. And then something happened. And I'll touch on that at the end if there's time. So Harriet, who is the president of the Keystone chapter of the NFB of Pennsylvania, had messaged me a day or two ago saying, hey, did you know there's a Philly meetup thing, blah, 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 blah. And I said, yeah, I knew. She says, are you going? And I said, I don't know. I said, I have a doctor's appointment that morning. I'm a little concerned what he might tell me. And Liz was making fun of me for that. She said, what do you think? He's going to operate right there? And I said, when he used that, when he used the ghetto Fields test on me a few years ago, I said, who knows? He might operate with a knife and a fork. And then I started thinking about it, it's not going to be that bad, and even if it is, I could still probably go. And then when Harriet said she was interested in going, I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to go. And I waited until after the appointment, but I was up until like 3 a.m. trying to edit episode 3 of White Canes Connect. And then I woke up at 7, which is even less sleep than I usually get. I usually try to get 4.5 hours each night. So 4 hours I was dragging, especially by the end of the time the alarm guy finished up. And, it was nice to talk to Ray because he was interested, he saw my dad's shadow box and he was interested in all that stuff. So we were talking about that. So, all in all, it's a lot different than it used to be when you get an alarm system put in. They used to have to run these wires to every window, every door, and so forth. Now everything is wireless. And, I think they were here a total of 3 hours. And some of that was probably because we were talking. So if you want an alarm system, let me know because, it was a very reasonably priced. Monthly rates are reasonable. And, we have fire and, break-in and whatnot. We didn't get any interior motion detectors because the dog would set those off. So we didn't get any. So, after all that, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. I'm all this stuff. I'm up early and out and about. But I told Harriet that I probably would go. And then I worried that if I didn't go, I wondered if she would still go. And I didn't want her not to go since she was free and available to go. So, I was leaning to going, and I told her, after my appointment that I would go. And so we made plans. Now, when I go into Center City, Philadelphia, usually I take the regional rail. And that goes from Swarthmore, which is about a mile from my house, right into Center City, around 15th and Market-ish. You can come up from underground anywhere from 15th to like 18th or 19th, and anywhere from Market or I guess the next one over is Vine. You can come up anywhere. I usually come up from underground at 15th and Market, which is if you're familiar with Center City, Philadelphia, there's a clothespin statue. I'm not sure why, but it's a good landmark. It's right across from City Hall, and so I usually come up there. And then that's underground. It's hard to get bearings because you can't use GPS because it doesn't help you because you're walking in front of stores and restaurants and takeaway restaurants and so forth. So. I figure out one way to get out and, then get my bearings once I'm above ground. So that's how I would have gone. But Harriet lives close to the trolley line. And to go into Philadelphia via the trolley, it requires changing at 69th Street in Upper Darby. At 69th Street, there's a transportation center. There's the Market Frankfurt line. It's the end of the line there. So if you get on there, and that's nice too, because coming the other way, you're not going to miss your stop because you just get off at the end. So Harriet said, okay, we'll meet at 69th Street, and go from there. And then we could go in together because she takes a different trolley than I do. She lives in Drexel Hill. So I take the 101, she takes the 102. And I want to leave. The trolley's supposed to get there at 4:40, and it's right at the Springfield Mall, right by where Jacob used to work, at Target at the Springfield Mall. And we leave the house at what I thought was 20 after 4, but it ended up being 25 after 4. And then there was a little traffic on 320, which I'm not sure why. But I started to panic, like, oh my God, we're not going to get there. If I don't get there, the next one's not for 20 minutes. How am I going to get into town? And, Liz said, well, I'll take you. I said, you can't take me. I'll take you to 69th Street then. I said, that takes away from me going on my own. It's not an adventure if I'm just sitting in a car, even an Uber for that matter. If I'm sitting in a car, going somewhere, that's easy. Trouble is, or the adventure is, and it's both, is, getting on the right mode of transportation at the right stop, going the right direction. And, if I can't do that, then how independent am I? And that's the goal, is to be independent and do it on my own. So I'm panicking on the way, and I'm sure Liz was probably ready to kill me. And we get to the mall, and where you pull down to go to the trolley stop at, behind Springfield Mall, they have these big orange road barriers. And I'm not talking like horses. I'm talking like cement-filled or water-filled barriers. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They have it blocked off. So I am like walking really quickly down this hill. And I get down there and I notice there's these big signs. And Liz is walking behind me. And I was at parts of it, I was almost jogging because I didn't want to miss the trolley. We get down there, Liz gets down there, and I said, Liz, what do these signs say? She said, they're doing track work on the trolley. It'll be closed from June something to August something. I'm like, oh my God, take the shuttle instead. And I'm like, oh my God. So the only place, I'm like, where is that even at? Now at Springfield Mall, there's a few bus lines that come in there. So I figure, well, it's got to be there. So I start walking quickly because again, now it's, 4:40 or 4:42. And I quickly walk, and as Liz walks up, because I didn't know how fast she was going to get up the hill, because it's down a hill where the trolley station is. She pulls up to me as I'm, walking quickly to get to it, and I jump in the car and we go over there, and I'm waiting where all the bus folk wait, and a bus comes, and I think it was a 107, and I don't know where that goes and where it's coming from, but person gets off, and I start to get on, and I said, is this the bus for the 101 trolley? And he's like, no, it's called the 101 shuttle. Because I asked him, do I take any of the other buses? He said, no, take the 101 shuttle. So I said, okay. So, Liz is waiting with me. She had ordered food from Payway, and I, because I was going to be outdooring dinner. This was, like I said, 4:45 at this point, 10:05. And within a couple of minutes, at like 4:50, 4:55, the bus that says 101 shuttle comes, and it says 69th Street. So I get on and swipe my card or whatever. I actually didn't know where to swipe it, so the guy took my card from me and swiped it in front. You kind of have to tap it, I guess. And so I'm sitting there, I'm freezing my butt off on the bus with the cold air blowing on me. And I'll tell you, when I was a kid, I would have loved that. But as I've gotten older, and since I lost all that weight, 10 years ago, I just I just can't stand the cold air blowing on me. All my body starts seizing up, and I can't move my fingers, and everything starts to hurt. And I couldn't wait to get off and get out into the warmth. And it wasn't really even that warm yesterday. I want to say upper 80s, but. So I'm riding there, and Harriet and I are texting back and forth. And she ended up waiting at her station for the shuttle for probably about 45 minutes. And I was almost to 69th Street by the time her shuttle came. And so by the time I got off and got into the station and figured out where I needed to go, I texted her and said, I'm here, and I'm, I think I'm right by the Market Frankfurt line. And she's like, oh, I just got here. And, we ended up meeting up, and then we went down and got on the Market Frankfurt line and got there. And, so getting in wasn't an issue. It was still daylight out. There was not a ton of people out and about. And I was surprised that when we got off, we got out of the Market Frankfurt line car at the 13th Street station. And of course, we're looking where we need to go to get above ground. And it's a little different from Suburban Station where the rail lines all go, where there's signage and you can see there's 8 million ways to get above ground. Well, this is basically like a long corridor that runs parallel to the tracks. And it's not on the platform. You walk up out of the platform area, or in our case, we walked down a few steps to get into this corridor. But we couldn't find a way out. Any place where there was a way out, it was shuttered. You couldn't use it. So we finally heard some people coming downstairs, and we ended up using those stairs to go above ground. And then, of course, once you go upstairs, you have to figure out, hey, where are we? And Harriet is very different than me. I will, if I can tell someone's coming, I will ask. Harriet will pursue someone to ask, which is a lot better than pulling your phone out, especially wearing, you're required to wear masks in the station and on any of the transportation modes of transportation with SEPTA, the regional mass transit company. So I'm wearing a mask. So your phone doesn't unlock, and then there's all the noise. So you have to listen to hear, everything. And I didn't bring earbuds with me, so so I didn't have those. So it was just a lot having Harriet there asking somebody. And, of course, we started walking the wrong way. We started walking east on Market, and we needed to walk west because we ended up coming above ground at like 11th Street. So we get to 13th, and we ended up crossing again because I thought we were walking east and not west. So we didn't need to cross. We needed to stay on that side, and then we needed to cross Market, and we walked all the way down, and we ended up getting there. It wasn't an issue. And again, along the way, I was using Seeing AI to try and find address numbers to know how much further down we needed to go. And we couldn't find any address numbers. So again, Harriet, as she heard somebody passing her, said, hey, excuse me, could you tell me what the address of this building is? And We knew we were on the correct side of the street because we needed to be on the odd side. We needed to go to 251 South. And, the first person we asked, we were at like 117. And then the next person, we were at like 207 or something like that, or 205. So we knew we were heading the right way. And we eventually got there. And, it was fine. That part was easy. But again, part of the adventure for me is getting there. It's like that old George Carlin line where he's talking about golf. They have all these, it takes up all this space, golf courses do, and then you hit a ball. And then, he said, once you find it, you should be happy. Hey, you found it. I always think of that when I'm trying to find a place to go because, that's like, wow, I did it. Especially the first few times I went places on my own, I'm like, holy cow, I left my house and here I am, I made it. So we got there and it was really nice. It was billed as game night. I don't know if anybody actually played games. There were probably about 25 or 30 folks there, most of whom were blind. Trish, who sets everything up, and her husband Andy were there with their daughter, and the daughter is blind. And Ryan, the boyfriend, is blind. In fact, Ryan came over to me at one point. He's in the NFB. They live in New Jersey. And he came over to me and said, "Oh, you're the treasurer of the Keystone chapter." I was the treasurer of the Keystone chapter in the 90s. Now, he doesn't seem to be that old of a guy. So I'm guessing, I thought he was only in his 30s, but I don't even think that would be possible. So I'm guessing he's in his 40s, if he was a treasurer back then. So I got to talk to him for a while and we spoke, and, it was nice. It was nice to talk with him. And, he was talking about, NFB stuff and Keystone stuff from way back in the day, even before some of the folks who are longstanding members like Jim Antonacci were even involved there. So, talked to them, and there was a girl named Marty there. Marty is a scientist, but interested in art and art. She's not blind, interested in art for visually impaired and blind folks. There was another person there. Just to back up on Marty. Marty is, that's her side thing. She likes to do that in her free time, doing art and things like that. There was another person there named Mallory, who is a resident, an ophthalmology resident, who wants to be connected to art and art for visually impaired and blind folks. And, so I got to talk to both of them, and they were there separately. I don't know that they knew each other coming in. Mallory was sitting at our table, and Marty had come over later on, and they were asking about, at one point we had introduced ourselves, and they tell us a little about yourself and so forth and so on. And when I was speaking, I said I am the treasurer of the Keystone chapter, and I've got a 8-month-old puppy named Ziggy, and, all sorts of trouble. And then, Trish mentioned, how he likes to eat different things, and we have to take him to the vet to get them removed. Hopefully not again. And hopefully not more surgery. And then she said, Trish said, "Why don't you talk about your podcast?" And I said, well, I have a podcast named, the I Can't See You podcast. And it's basically a vlog without video. And I said, and there's another show that I'm involved in. And at this point, Lisa hadn't gotten there. So I mentioned White Canes Connect, and I mentioned Lisa and I doing it, and told folks where they could go. And then when Lisa came in a little while later, and she talked about herself, she mentioned it. And then there were more questions about White Canes Connect and, where to go to listen. So hopefully we got some more listens to that. Again, it's not a podcast yet. It's not up on the directories. So still early on, but it's getting better, I have to say, and again, if there's time at the end, I'll touch on my editing skills or lack thereof. So we had pizza and there were cookies, and Harriet was mad at herself because she ate more cookies than she wanted. Let's just leave it at that. I won't give the number. It was 5. And I'll tell you more about Harriet on the way, when we were walking home, because she, had I been on my own, I don't know where I'd be right now. But it was nice to get to talk to people. I got to talk to Trish and Andy. Andy has a company that does walking and Segway tours in Philadelphia and 9 other cities. And I know I'll forget them all if I leave them out, but some of the key cities, Boston, Washington, New York, Miami, New Orleans, LA, Seattle, Chicago. I may have missed 1 or 2. And it's just a very cool idea. Obviously, I don't know that the blind folk would get on this Segway, but, obviously, and again, like I said, Trish and Andy both have their site. So and that's a lot of times we would meet. The meetup would be at Andy's tour hub, where the Segways are and things like that. So, but I talked to him, and it was nice to talk to him, and talked to a few other folks. And one of the things that I realized last night, and I guess I should have known this all along. There was a guy there named George, and he has a black lab named Mulligan. Or is it Milligan? Mulligan, I think it was. It's not the thing from golf. Maybe it was Milligan. But I went over and I was standing there, and the dog came up to me, of course, because... And the dog is just licking my knee and then nudging my knee. And so I'm petting him, and he's happy. I could see his tail was wagging. And I moved a little bit away because I was listening to a conversation that had kind of moved a little bit further. And the dog kind of came along with me, even though he was on some sort of leash or something. And I realized at that point, I really like dogs, if I didn't know that already. So it was just a really nice time. And it was the place, I can't believe I didn't mention this, the place that we met at was a place I've been to a couple times before. Catherine, who is part of Philly Touch Tours, which is also Trish, she lives in an apartment building on 13th Street that has one of those great community rooms, and that's where everything was. And so that part was really cool. And again, I always like going. It's a lot easier for me, and Harriet and I were talking about this a little bit. When you know where you're going, when you've been there before, it's so much easier than trying to figure out where and how to go. And, so we were there, and, we're talking, and Lisa sat with Harriet and I, and Marty and Mallory. And again, people were getting up and switching tables. It was kind of like musical chairs at some points. But, we were talking, and as it was, getting late and we were getting ready to leave, Lisa had left. She was on what's called CCT, which is, I don't remember what it translates into. It's, when you... It's run by the mass transit company, SEPTA, for folks who are disabled. So it's door to door. The problem with it is, and I've never used it, the problem with it is, if you say you have to be at work at 9, so you want to be picked up at 8, they might get there at 7, they might get there at 9. And, so to me, that's just not reliable. Enough to warrant taking them. And I know it's not very expensive, but I just, that's one thing. And I briefly talked with Harriet about it, being blind and having to rely on something like CCT or even just mass transit in general, not being able to just walk out and jump in your car and go. It's not like it's New York. And Jane always complains when she'll get to the subway platform. Oh, I just missed the train. And I've said it before, when you miss a subway in New York, unless it's on the weekend, you have like 5 to 7 minute wait. When you miss a train or even the trolley or the Market Frankfurt line, it's 10 or 15 minutes. And, if it's the train, it might not be for another hour. And lately, on the weekends, the train runs every 2 hours. So if you miss that train, which Harriet had done going to that picnic during the NFB convention that the Keystone chapter had, she had to wait 2 hours for the next one, which is just brutal. It's just, our time is just, I have always said time is the most valuable thing you have. Money, you can hopefully make more of it. There's a chance. Maybe you don't, but there's a chance you can. You can never make more time. So, so when you have to rely on someone else like that, you kind of lose that control. So Lisa had left, and Harriet and I started saying goodbye to folks, and then we left, and we had to walk back down 13th Street back to Market, and then go underground again. So on our walk down, now the streets were a little more packed because there were some restaurants on there, but at one point we're walking, and I take a step, and I nearly wipe out. It was like ice. And I don't know what it was at this point. And then I put my other foot down, and still it's like one of those cartoons when the people are on ice skates and their body is flailing. And I'm shocked I didn't hit anybody with my cane as my body was flailing. But thank God I didn't go down. I take a couple more steps, and Harry goes, "Ew, what's that smell? It smells like throw up." And I'm guessing that's what I nearly wiped down on. And then I noticed the smell too. So thank God I didn't go down into that, because that would have been awful. And I'm sure Harriet would not have walked with me all the way back to the Market Frankfurt line station. So we get to Market Street, and we're on the wrong side of Market Street to go underground. So we hear an ambulance or fire or police or whatever. So we're waiting to see if it's coming all the way up Market or if it's going the other way. And meanwhile, the light has changed cycles, and I hear somebody yell that it's okay, you can go, it's green, and then we didn't go, and they come over to us, and they say, you could have gone, and I said, well, there was the siren, we weren't sure how far down they were, and we didn't want to cross, even though it might have been okay for us to go then, we didn't want to cross, and impede that, whatever it was. So then the girl who came over to talk to us, said, "Oh, I get it. Okay, I understand." And so we get to 13th Street, we cross over Market Street, and we get to the steps to go downstairs. So we go downstairs, we walk one way. There's a barrier that stops us from going any further. So we walk the other way. We get to a barrier that stops us from going anywhere. Now, why they don't just close those stairs off? Because there's no place you can go. There's not one open gate, open door, open anything once you go down those stairs. So I don't know why they don't close it. Why they can certainly put barriers every other place. Why not put one there? And if you can't put it at the top of the stairs to stop you from going down, put it at the bottom. And they didn't. So we go down there. So we waste some time there. We then cross over 13th Street heading west, and we come to another set of stairs. We go down those stairs. Same thing. Nothing is open. Can't go through. At this point, we said, you know what? Let's just walk to the clothespin, since we're I don't remember if we were still in between 13th and 14th or between 14th and 15th. We figured, let's just walk to City Hall. We'll cross there and go down at the clothespin, because that's where we were very familiar with. That's where we would do that for, our Keystone chapter meetings on Saturdays when it was at 15th and Walnut. So we get to City Hall. Now, if you're familiar with Center City, Philadelphia, City Hall sits in the middle of Market Street and Broad Street. And it's like a circle that goes around City Hall. So there's all sorts of roads going every which way. And it's hard for blind people, and maybe for other people too, but it's hard to tell when it's safe to go, because traffic always seems like it's moving. So you basically cross one little chute of roadway, and then you wait on an island, because when one roadway is stopped, the other one is still going. So we cross over the chute that's going from Market to Broad, of that part of the circle. We wait on the island to cross the one that was the main part of this circle. And maybe you can't call it a circle since there's a big building in the middle, but you get the idea. And we wait, and then the traffic stops, and then we cross, and now we're in the middle where City Hall is. And so we're walking around City Hall, and we get to the other side, and then we have to do the same thing again. But this time it seems like it's a little bit more difficult, and I don't know why. It's tough because it's now, 9:45 at night, so there's not that much traffic, so it's hard to tell if traffic is still moving and what the story is. So we're waiting, and then I I kind of thought that the light looked green, and then a car finally comes and stops. So I said to Harriet, I said, that car over there has stopped. We should be safe to go. And just as we're about to walk out into the street, a guy on a bike, makes a little noise. And so we wait. So I'm like, okay. And then another car comes and is stopped. I said, I think we're still safe. Let's go. And I start to go. And a guy on another bike, I don't know if they were together, doesn't say anything and nearly runs into me. And listening to, I don't remember what podcast, I don't remember if it was That Real Blind Tech Show or Blind Abilities, but they talked about, and I think it was That Real Blind Tech Show, where an actress was struck and killed by someone on a bike in Brooklyn within the last month. And, that's always been one of my fears. If somebody's on a bike, for me, I'm not going to hear that at all. And I didn't hear him at all. So fortunately, I didn't get hit, and Harriet hadn't stepped off the curb yet, so that part was good. So we crossed to the island, and then we're looking to see where the crosswalk was, because it's not. It was at one end of the island, not in the middle like it was at the previous island when we crossed. Heading west. From the lower side of Market Street on the other side of City Hall. So we find the crosswalk and we see the light. I noticed something flashing, and I said, oh, it's the hands flashing. That means we can go, meaning we didn't have a lot of time, but we could make it. And we did, obviously. I'm talking to you now. And then we go downstairs, and we get on the Market Frankfurt line. We find our way, and we get on, and that part was good. And now, there were 3 times that Harriet said to me, because I wanted to go a different way, there were 3 times I said, no, I think we should go this way. She's like, no, this way is this way. And, we got to go west, not east, and blah, blah, blah. And she was right all 3 times. And I told her I would mention it in the podcast. And she said, don't forget to mention the throw up in the podcast. And I said, I won't forget that. But I knew by the time I got home, that had to be off my shoes, because I was walking through, whenever we walked through or past a place that had a rug, I was wiping my feet on it. I was trying to wipe the edges, putting my foot on an angle so it came off. And I knew it had to all be off by the time I got home, because Ziggy didn't start licking my shoes. So I knew I was safe. And they didn't smell. I noticed when I took them off last night, they did not smell from that. So that was fine. So again, because it's late at night, we get to 69th Street, and the normal way you walk to get to the trolley and buses when the trolleys aren't running, you basically come upstairs from the Market Frankfurt line, you make a right, and then you make another right, and you go down this hallway, and then you make a left, and you go to the trolley or the buses. Well, you came up from the Market Frankfurt line, you made that right, and then there's a gate. You can't get past the gate. So Harriet said, well, I've seen this before. I think we have to go outside. So we go outside. And again, when Jane and I were at 69th Street at one point, Jane was a little freaked out by it. And we weren't even there at night. It was midday or late afternoon. I don't remember when. But it wasn't dark out. And she was a little scared of, the folks that were there. Now, it was a lot more packed than it was when we were there last night. So we're walking around the building, and, we're coming across people, and one guy says to us, oh, you guys are amazing getting places on your own, blah, 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 blah. Thanks, buddy. So then we finally make our way, and we don't know how to we're on one side of the tracks/roadway, and we need to get to the other side. And usually you walk around, counterclockwise, and you get to where you need to be. And we start walking that way, and there's a homeless guy there, and he says, oh, no, you can't go that way. You just got to go down to the end. And again, I'm pretty sure he was probably pointing. I couldn't even see where he was, but he said, you got to go the other way and then just cross over. I said, okay, thank you. And Harriet said, thank you. So we cross over, find our way over there. And almost as soon as we get to that landing, Harriet and I have a couple of minutes to talk, and she's texting with Lisa, who had already gotten home. And the 102 bus for the 102 shuttle comes, and she gets on, so I say goodbye to her, and I'm like, okay, now what am I going to do? Because that bus is sitting there, so I don't hear or see anything else coming. I'm like, I knew I had this phone message, so I thought, let me listen to it. And I listened to it, and it's Brian Fischler, and I already told you the outcome of that. But I'm like, should I call him now? I know as soon as I call him, the bus is going to show up. And after waiting a while, I thought, maybe I'll call him. At least the bus will show up if I don't get to talk to him, and it won't be as late as if I waited. So I call him and we start talking. And he said, did you listen to my message? I said, I heard it was you and I heard it was urgent, and I told him the whole story. I had a meetup and, we were out and about and, I'm at a transportation hub, so you might hear buses and other things. He says, no problem. And we're talking and going on and on and on. And it was great. I was really happy to speak with him. I will mention this. I listen to podcasts at 1.5x. So to talk to him in real life and hear his voice different than when I listened to him on his podcast, it was kind of funny. And I just, that kind of cracked me up. And I realized that after we hung up, I'm like, man, he sounded different. I'm like, oh, because I listened faster. So we ended up talking to the point where the bus came. I got on the bus. I swiped my card. I sat on the in the chair. I talked to him for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I got off the phone with him finally. And again, I don't know where I'm going to get off because I can't see anything, especially now it's night. I don't know where we are. So I start texting with Jane, and I keep trying to look out the windows, figuring I'm going to see some sort of landmark. And then finally, I see a shopping center, a couple of trolley stops from the Springfield Mall. And I recognize it because it's a place that we get pizza from when we get pizza out. It's called Bella Roma in Springfield, which we absolutely love. It's just a mom and pop place, but they have an app where you can order it online and then you go pick it up. It's awesome. We all love it. All 4 of us love it. So after the next stop, I switched seats I was behind the driver. I switched to across the aisle so I can talk to the driver. And I said to her, is the next one Springfield Mall? And she said, yes. So, and I don't know for sure that I would have known because, it's late. So the mall was closed. It didn't seem as brightly lit. And again, it might have been as brightly lit as normal. It's just, my vision isn't as good. And so I get off the bus, and at that point I have to call an Uber. It's too far to walk home. It's around little over 2 miles. So I call an Uber. Uber comes, brings me home. I get out of the car. I walk in the grass just to make sure I get if there's any residual vomit on my on my shoes, and I make it home. And again, that's had Liz picked me up, this podcast would be a half an hour long, and I apologize for the for the length. But that was it. It turned out to be a great night. Now, part of it was made because of my conversation with Brian. But it's always nice to get together with Harriet, and we talked about NFB stuff and Keystone Chapter stuff, and Lisa, who obviously we talk a lot because, we do that podcast together, well, soon to be podcast together, that you can listen to. I'll put the newest episode on the show notes page of this. It's episode 3. Typically, the other episodes are at nfbp.org/WhiteCanesConnect, or you can just go to ican'tseeyou.com/WCC, and you can find it there. And just briefly, I'll mention my problems with editing it. All of the tracks, for example, my voice tracks from Zoom seem to have the same title. And I think that's where the issue is. Even though sometimes it's recorded with the NFB of Pennsylvania Zoom or, my personal Zoom, they all seem to have the same or close enough title that when I drag one of the tracks in, it erases like the other tracks. So, there were 3 different sessions that we did this podcast in. There was an interview with a person named Addison Lemon. There was an interview with Lizzie Mohammed Park. And then there was Lisa and I doing the intros and the wrap up at the end, the intro at the beginning and the wrap up at the end. So whenever I would when I dragged in my stuff for the intro and wrap up, it wiped out my track on the interview portion of the interview with Lindsay Mohammed Park. So I had to go back in and redo it. So when I dragged that other track in with Lindsay Mohammed Park, it wiped out the track for the wrap up and the intro. So I realize now, and I started to wonder, do I edit everything down first? Because when Lisa and I do the intro and wrap up, we talk in between and say, okay, you say this or I'll say that. So do I edit that first before I even start to make the episode? And I don't think I'm going to do that, only because more times than not, we will have an interview done first. And maybe when we finish that interview and I get the tracks from Lisa, if we're using the NFB of Pennsylvania's Zoom, I will immediately rename them, David track interview with so-and-so, and Lisa track interview with, whatever that person's name is. So then at least it will be separate, because they, like I said, there were some, and it was confusing at one point when I did the episode 2, they were identical. I happened to see that. And this one, I thought it would be different because, I was using my personal Zoom account for the wrap up and intro with Lisa and I, because I didn't feel a need to, use the state side, the state one, because it just wasn't necessary, for the, half an hour that it was going to take us to do it. And it took us more because we always talk about so many different things, Lisa and I, not stuff that goes into the podcast, just, stuff in general. So I think that's the issue. And hopefully I figured that out for next time. The next show is going to be hopefully with, Blind Merchant Association members, and there's a few of them, and I'm looking forward to that. But you can listen to episode 3 on the show notes page of this episode. So it'll be ican'tseeyou.com/136. And remember, I Can't See You sounds like a whole sentence. It's only 7 characters long. ican'tseeyou.com/136. I really do appreciate you listening to this episode of the I Can't See You podcast. Please rate and review, share it with your friends. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you listening today. And I hope you're staying safe and being well with Delta and all the other Greek letters getting together and coming to make life just as miserable as when it was just plain old COVID-19. Please stay safe, be well, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.